Hello, everyone. Is the sound okay? Yes. Thanks for coming today. We're super happy to be back in person in Cannes, all together. My name is Leslie Vuchot. I run the festival agency, and I'm super happy to be moderating this conversation. And I'm going to very briefly introduce and call on stage Carl Spence. Please come in. Charlotte Urny. Alexis Jonkosa. And Jen Fries. So because we only have a very short hour, I'm going to do a very brief introduction of our guests. I'm going to look at my phone just because we have notes. I'm not texting anyone, just so I'm not being rude. And we're going to finish right on time, which is at 3:30. And we have a screening at 4, so we'll be really on time. Thank you so much. So Carl Spence, well, I've known you for a very, very long time. You were directing the Seattle Film Festival and then the Palm Springs Film Festival as an artistic director. You're now directing the Sonoma International Film Festival, and we're super happy to see you. You're also consulting for Eventual. And we're very, very happy. Thank you for coming. Charlotte, you've started your career in sales, I think at MK2 and Indie Sales. You have then joined the Sinando team, and actually this conference is part also of the festival hub that you were part of the team, I think, to start the first edition. And you're now the festivals director for FIAPF and consulting for other companies as well in the film industry. Correct? Alexis Jonkosa, you've started as a cultural journalist about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and have moved to Luxembourg, and you have taken the direction as the position of artistic director of the Luxembourg City Film Festival ever since its first edition, which is like 12 years ago.
Exactly.
Correct. And you are now you're part, and you've created the Federation of Europa International
Film Festival.
Europa Festivals, I'm so sorry, which has a lot to say today. So we're super happy to have you.
Thank you.
And Jennifer, that I'm just meeting, and I'm really excited to meet. You have been, I don't want to say your title. You were the executive leadership at TIFF and the Toronto Region Board of Trade. It's super interesting to have Jen on our side today because we're going to talk about the different sources of financing for film festivals. And Jennifer has a track record that is extremely impressive, has reached almost like $200 million, if I'm not mistaken, over the course of her career. So we're super happy to have you all. Thank you again. To start very briefly, this conversation really doesn't, as we say, it's a conversation, it's a panel, it's not like a lecture. We don't mean to, we're here to generate ideas and maybe share some experiences that can be valuable for other festivals, for other parts of the industry. And I think we wanted in an introduction to kind of remind the core values of festivals and the core missions of festivals. And I think maybe Alexis, would you be happy to start with this? Thank you so much.
I'd be very happy. Yes, we are at this exact moment where we are trying to redefine ourselves as festival, and before going to where we're gonna go, we have to remember what we are already. And we have, of course, we know by experience what we do and why we matter as festivals into the industry. We are talking about film literacy, audience development, dissemination, support to the distribution, support to the sales, support to the theaters. So we know all those things. And what is really interesting right now is that we all know that we are facing some new challenges, like financially and everything. And so there's clearly some things that we're realizing that there's a lack of literacy, because we all know by experience, but what about the people who finance us right now? Because the situation is going to be very different with Jennifer on the matter of the way of surviving for festivals. But then when you see what happened like a few days ago with Clermont-Ferrand, It was very interesting that they had this finance cut by 2 and everything. That was a big thing. And it's clearly an ignorance of the fact about why festival matter, because for this very specific example, it had a study that shows that when you invest €1 locally into a festival, there's 22 that generate incomes. And we are just talking about direct income. We don't talk about the production of culture and everything. So who's to blame? It's us, basically. So because we didn't develop that data, we didn't develop that literacy. So this is one thing that we have to work on, but maybe we can discuss that later. But yeah, festival matters, and we have now to explain why, and then we can work on the next steps about where we are going, I think.
Yeah, I think to follow up on what Alexis said, which I completely agree with, is that also we know that now coming out of the pandemic, it's really important that all the stakeholders of the value chain are able to resume operations and go back to functioning normally. And we see that there are some really worrisome, as you say, budget cuts from funders. And the idea is to develop, as Alexis said, some data regarding actually the impact of festivals, which is not only economical because it's creating jobs, it's giving works to suppliers in the local territories, it's giving visibility to regions to attract tourism, because festivals were actually initially created kind of as tourist traps or as places where tourists would come to highlight a region. So it's not only this economical aspect, but it's also, as Alexis said, it's also the important social impacts that festivals have on the regions, and how they are educating people to film, and how they are creating bridges and discussions, and I'm sure we will speak a lot about that. What we did with FIAPF during the pandemic is that we released the call of support. What is really important is that we get maximum amount of awareness around this topic to public and private funders. And the idea, of course, is now how do we calculate that? I know that many festivals are doing the job, but maybe it should be a more collective one. For example, Locarno Film Festival has published a couple of months ago a report really precise regarding the amount of money in this sense that the festival is bringing to the region. But this is something that we should continue working towards, I guess.
Absolutely. And I'll just add something to that, just jumping off of what you were saying, that the cultural impact is something very important to note as well. Especially in these times, no matter what your political standpoint is, festivals are a space for discourse. They're a space for people to come together and talk about world issues and see the world in a different way through another perspective. And so it's a huge, huge, huge opportunity. It's a huge value proposition for festivals within the broader community. And I will add to that, as you think about your stakeholders, I feel like most festivals don't think about all the stakeholders they possibly could be attracting. So they think about your traditional corporate sponsors, but do they really think about the corporate community at large and what that value proposition I just mentioned around cultural impact could mean for the corporate community? So again, looking beyond those transactional relationships into more of these, bigger conversations where you can bring in a wider array of stakeholders from government agencies, community, individuals, major gift philanthropy kind of donors, as well as, of course, the corporate community.
And I guess I'll add to the conversation that, of course, the Cannes Film Festival is important, but I think all festivals of all sizes are important to the ecosystem of film and to the health of filmmaking and the filmmaking scene, because without film festivals, I don't think we would be developing audiences. And now with the audiences are not going to cinemas as much, it's starting to go back up a bit. But I think festivals are one place where you can actually generate new audiences, and you can rebuild those audiences, and they can. And some cinemas are doing more eventized sort of festival program, are doing better with that than they are with their sort of theatrical. And I think festivals are back. I just started a new festival. It's not a new festival. It's the 26th year, but the Sonoma International Film Festival, and we just had the most successful festival ever in March that exceeded what we did in 2019 before the pandemic. And we actually premiered a film that sold to a distributor and got a review. So, it can happen. You can actually. But I think the most thing is that there's so much that festivals offer, and they're often undervalued. and some of the smaller festivals and regional festivals are not valued sometimes at the outset, but they're quite valuable to the, and without them, I don't think the bigger festivals and also the film world would not be where it is right now.
I think a very important topic for us, and hopefully it's interesting for all of you, is to think or to discuss like the different ways of financing. And we're very lucky to have like Charlotte and Alexis from Europe, and to have you and Jen from North America. And I would love if you could explain like how North American festivals are usually financed. And
well, we might be different from Toronto to like the bigger festivals. The Seattle International Film Festival is one of the biggest audience festivals in the United States, and it was primarily funded by ticket sales, which is like a great thing, but also a very scary thing, because you have to nurture the audience, but you can't scare them away. And then like Sonoma, it's more private funding and some government funding, and then ticket sales are the smallest.
And quick question, is a ticket in Seattle like the usual price, or is it like kind of reduced because it's a festival?
Yeah, it's around market rate, what sort of the highest end sort of ticket you'd pay for just go to regular blockbuster films. So probably right now it's around like maybe $15. It might be the around $15 probably.
That is very different.
Yes.
No, but it's cool.
I mean,
it's rich. That's why we need
I
to vote.
wish the ticket sales brought in more money for TIFF at the time. I don't think things may have changed now. I haven't been with TIFF for a couple of years, but what I will say is I believe the structure is comparable. We really drove most of our business through corporate partnerships as well as through community partnerships. That is absolutely critical for the business, both year-round as well as during the festival. So we had have a big facility in Toronto. Many of you may have been, the TIFF Bell Lightbox, and it was also really important that we brought on those corporate partners to support the funding. And what I always say to anybody, almost regardless of what industry you're in, but especially when you're in an arts and culture organization, try not to have any one of your revenue streams be more than 30-35% of total revenue, because those revenues fluctuate. And now we're seeing a lot within the European market of what we saw, I know, Carl, you know this, like 20 years ago in the North American market, where a lot of the government funding is becoming stagnant, and then we're seeing the need for what can be called gap funding, but actually in North America ends up being significantly more than what government funding typically would be comparably. So looking at memberships, looking at obviously creating streaming services, doing partnerships with streaming services, corporate partnerships, philanthropy, getting involved with philanthropists, really interesting, and also a new potential opportunity for the European market. That's really how the makeup was built at TIFF, and tickets were a fraction.
In the U.S., I'll say one more thing, we'll go to Europe. But in the U.S. also, I think the difference between Canada is probably that the corporate sponsors are like bigger than the government sponsors, but the change has been, it's the same, is that philanthropy and individual donors as corporate sponsorship has gone down and been more difficult. There's definitely been more coming from individuals, and those individuals, without them, we wouldn't have the Sonoma Film Festival. Without them, in Seattle, they just bought the Cinerama Theater, the festival, and they wouldn't have done that without some major donors. It was all private money that made that happen. There was very little, no government money from that.
And I understand there is, and I'd love to hear from the two of you, I understand there is a growing culture of philanthropy in Europe and in other markets that historically wasn't there, but that's something that is in a nascent stage. So again, going back to value proposition, really important to think about that particular stakeholder. What are their wants, needs, fears, dreams, desires, and how can your offering really benefit them, compel them to want to invest in you? You're not asking for a handout, you're asking for an investment in culture, an investment of the future of the community, an investment potentially even in their own platform, their own recognition as a community leader. So there are so many different ways to structure that value proposition.
Yeah, there's a big gap, I think, between the Europe and the North America about this philanthropy question. I mean, it's part not only of the cinema, but all the cultural scene. Like when you go to the US and you see like a museum or something, it's something that you couldn't compare with the financing system in Europe. So I think progressively, I see through the networks that we are all trying to do one step further to that direction, but we are really, really far to have it like from our own perspective, but also about the people who are ready to invest and consider like philanthropy as an investment. It's so far from our culture so far.
And maybe the thing that's unified us is that we're all getting smart about getting data and having better data and information about our audiences and and all of our stakeholders, and how to how that can help us advance and improve and grow.
With that complication that there's some data that we can get, like the production of value, production of culture, production of content. There's some data that we never get because it's all hypothetical. It's some things that we know that we can like verify on facts, but it's some things you can't calculate. So yeah.
Charlotte, sorry, you wanted to say something.
No, it's fine. I just want to mention as well that, of course, we are working with European festivals, but also with we have also an international scope within FIAPF, so which is also really important. And we have some working with some regions where also like inflations are really really high, and the economic troubles that may exist and that exist in Europe and in the United States or in North America. Is also a big topic in non-Western countries. And so I cannot speak too much on the fact on how they are financed. I know that many festivals are financed by the governments and by the local authorities, and they are also contributing to spreading the culture around film. But they are really, I just want to mention that also non-Western countries have really important events, and that those events bring together also the international industry, and that they shouldn't be forgotten in the process. That was my point.
Very good point. No, I mentioned you're based in Europe, but you're definitely representing festivals worldwide. My bad.
No worries.
I would love, Alexis, if you don't mind, because maybe not everyone in the audience knows, first of all, what your federation is about, and maybe talk about the missions, because I think your two organizations maybe are worth mentioning a little bit more, or sharing a bit more info for our audience.
Yes, so we started in 2018 to think about this network, who's basically first a human collective. That's something that's a huge asset on making a group, and the idea was to tackle first of all the difficulties that face the industry and festivals in particular, and how we can be very supportive the one to the other. So
how many festivals are you?
It's 11 so far.
11
with some
so
people
far. Okay.
in
Europe.
It's of Galway. We've got I've seen a couple of them. There is Hamburg, who is here. I've seen Geneva. There is Bordeaux. There is a lot of us, even Cinemania, because Quebec is part as well of the European dynamic, and cool. And so we are started to work on common project to the general benefit of the festival. So we have worked on thanks to Europa International, so the international sales organization. Yeah. We have worked on a good practice guide, for example, to improve the relation between festivals and sales, because we had some misunderstanding and we all like to work together, but we think it can be improved. And it was super efficient at a point now when someone is applying to a position as a festival manager. Usually they've got this document of 5 pages, and so in 1/2 of an hour they know what are the good practice.
Good practice.
And now we are trying to, I don't know if it's a good moment to talk, so we are looking for what's happening with inflation, like Charlotte said about we are facing a doubling of prices into the hospitality aspect, when the revenues, which are basically public funding, are fixed, if not worse. Right. So we are trying to find some new strategies, and this is part of the reflections that we have all together. And honestly, this group has been lifesaver at the time of the pandemic, because we have been very supportive. We are working all together on sharing ideas, initiative, and moral support. So
I'm excited for our lunch for that reason.
No, I think it's definitely times where, and I think that was one of the points we wanted to mention as well, is the collaboration between festivals. And maybe Jennifer, you wanted to continue on that aspect?
Sure. Got a couple examples of that. Most recently in my consulting work, so I run a small consultancy that specifically focuses on revenue strategy, operational efficiency for creatives. So looking at really commercial thinking for creative industries. And I've worked with organizations from over 20 countries. And interestingly, most recently, we did a couple of workshop sessions where we brought some organizations together, and they've started brain trusts with each other, where they're starting to talk. They've got WhatsApp groups going. They're from all over the world, and they're sharing best practices, sharing learnings. Sometimes they're even sharing information about major companies that are doing business in their various jurisdictions and getting insider scoop on what are their brand values, how can they do brand alignment with us, really down into the nitty-gritty, which is great. And then when I was at TIFF, and I'm sure this is still going on as well, a huge part of the portfolio that I oversaw was the festivals partnerships. And there are hundreds of small festivals in the city of Toronto. Toronto really is a film city. We're very proud of that. And TIFF, of course, is the largest, but with TIFF Bell Lightbox being the home of cinema in Toronto, we welcomed in a huge array of other festivals and also shared best practices, even would share scoops on, when films were coming or what are some partnerships or government funds where they could go and get some extra money. So really, really great learnings that way. And what I will say is sometimes, even as TIFF, we would get scoops. We would get some insider information from the really small guys. So it wasn't always that we were the ones kind of talking down to people. It really was collaborative. So I also really encourage that you partner with people of all different sizes because everyone has something to learn from each other.
Yeah, as a complement to that, what we are realizing right now is that maybe it's time for festival. It had this European Commission will for the festival to organize themselves as federation. It's relevant, and we see how useful it is. But still, now we realize the side effect of that is that we are all maybe inside our federation working separately on the same topic, which is a bit ridiculous. Like, do we need 15 same events with the same topics separately, where we go more or less to the same conclusion, when we could maybe share the benefit of those sessions on work? When we are talking about collecting data and everything, so sorry, Leslie.
No, go for it.
When we are talking about collecting data, about getting data, getting those information, why wouldn't we share the benefit of those individual sessions? It's a shame that at some moment I've noted in some calendars that this events were 3 days before or after had the same topic with different panels getting to the same conclusion that were not shared to the global audience. So maybe it's time, as we are already organized as federation, as group, to come front on especially at this moment where we are facing difficulties, financially, ecologically, environment and everything, all those impact, sustainability and everything. So it's time for us to show as a group, but not only a group of 11, 12, 20, 30, depending on the federation, but all together. It's a couple of thousands. So
yeah, I think wanted to talk about maybe Festival Alliance as well in the US.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was going to talk about, that I agree that alliances now are more important than ever, and working together, whether it's at your super local level or your regional level or national level. And in the US, there's a couple of things. There's a group for, as part of my previous organization, we had cinemas who were offering those as well. So there was Art House Convergence, which was a great organization and I'm still in the group that every week people talk to each other and share information.
Can I just explain what Art House Convergence is?
Art House Convergence is a collective of independent cinemas throughout the United States that would come together annually and then share information and act as sort of
Sundance, which was an amazing convention with basically all the art house.
Yeah, all the independent art houses and people who weren't part of the corporate, NATO, weren't really part of NATO. And then out of that also, another organization sort of emerged for festivals, specifically to advocating for festivals from the perspective of festivals, by and for festivals, called the Film Festival Alliance, and that is getting stronger and represents hundreds of festivals mostly in the United States.
And what would be if you had any tips to share maybe for European festivals together, what is the best shape of an event to gather all these festivals? Is it during another convention? Is it actually a standalone event? We need to come up with something today.
I mean, if you want to come up with something today, it's just you have a group, group where that's an online group where people just start participating, and then I get a digest, and then there's conversations and people post information. There's things about films. Someone is having issues with talking about sort of booking theatrical versus event screenings, or someone's looking to do a membership program. There's and people just share quite freely, but getting together in person at places like this or other major festivals also is quite, networking really, and friendships and relationships, I think, is the most important part of success for anything that you do in life, and for And as a member of the Film Festival Alliance, I've actually gained a lot from that, from the beginnings of it. So, but I think for Dave, we figured out a way to have a group where people could join, you know, and you just find who are the other things? Are there people that are the same people that are, you know, all get funding from a certain fund, or get together and talk about that, or is
make
you know,
subdivisions of like with different topics, I guess.
Well, everyone come to the Festivals Hub cocktail party after this tonight. We'll figure it out there. But what I will say is that the whole idea of competition, I think, needs to change. And I'm hoping that that's one thing the pandemic taught us, is that we don't all need to be in competition with each other all the time. We can actually support each other. There are safe spaces to support each other, share information. We should feel more free to share information, and that does lead to, I believe in collective intelligence. So that does lead to us thinking bigger, better, and maybe being a bit inspired by others as opposed to envious of others. And so I will say that's also where going virtual and collecting information or collecting people from around the world makes a lot of sense, because when you're only sticking to your local market, you may have that natural feeling of competition, whereas if you're connecting with film leaders from all over the world, they're not going to be all over your stakeholders. So it's a great opportunity for you to share learnings without feeling in any way threatened.
Except what do you do with those people that don't play nice?
Drag them on LinkedIn. No,
we're all competitive, but no, I do agree. It is collaboration is key, but you know, sometimes like everyone has to be collaborative. It has to go both ways.
Yeah, and I would like to add to that two points. That so with FIAPF we have a group of international film festivals and regional film festivals that we are trying to support as well. And I feel like we have collective discussions with those festivals. So we are representing Cannes and Venice and Toronto, but also Eurasia, Shanghai. We have a lot of Mar del Plata in South America. And I feel like I've been only with the FIAP for a couple of months, but I feel like the discussion we have had have been really productive. And I think I think what Alexis and everybody is sharing is that sharing information is important. And I feel like the information that we are sharing between our group is worth also sharing with others. So that's one thing. And I have also a little comment on the fact that we are a producers association originally, but we are representing producers mainly, and that these discussions should take place within the festivals, but also with the rights holders, as you are doing with the sales agents, for example. And we have also the producers' perspective on that. So I feel like it's a kind of a good mix of people that should exchange and finding the right framework to do that, which is, of course, the most complicated thing. But I feel it's really positive discussion we are having now.
Thank you very much. And I think we were going to transition about the different challenges of film promotion. And I think maybe you wanted to start with this, Charlotte, or...
Yeah, sure.
Yeah?
I can talk about the bad things or the stressful things. No, it's not. It's mostly we wanted to keep this panel really positive and light, and really show why festivals are important, why they matter, why we should all have a collective discussion around this, and how to make things even better in the future. But what I just wanted to mention in terms of like, and it also goes back to the key role of festivals, is that we really see like daily how festivals have a immense role to play in showcasing the works, and they are really important place for discussions and creating opportunities for networking and discoverability and all of those topics. And of course, this comes with a whole ecosystem, as we see here in Cannes, but as we see also in in all the festivals. And this ecosystem is made of people that promote the film, and the festivals are also a place where you can put some light on your film. So, of course, there is a challenge, or let's say like opportunity, in terms of how is the press and the critics, how are the press and the critics involved in promoting the films, because they have a really, really important role in that. And how, of course, also the talents are involved in promoting the films. So that's this kind of the discussions the point I wanted to add regarding just the promotion and the importance of the ecosystem at festivals to promote the films.
Okay, thank you so much.
And I think I mean, it might be provocative to say it or not, but I think the future is bright, and things are looking up. But also, you can't just do what we used to do. You have to do a lot more. You have to work harder, and you have to make sure that all the stakeholders are involved. And as a festival, you need to work harder to get audiences. You also have to work harder to connect with the filmmakers and work for the filmmakers. You also have to make sure that you are fulfilling sort of the currency of, with the sales agents, with the filmmakers, with the audience, with your sponsors. There's a lot of people you need to keep happy to make this all work, and it is getting harder. But there are also new opportunities with just the ways as far as marketing goes, as far as digital marketing has made it easier. I mean, it's more difficult to do grassroots and have a on the ground team of people doing things, but you can do a lot more with digital and with the information that we're able to extract from our ticketing systems and our back end systems. We're able to also be more effective in how we reach people, and I don't know. So that's where I'm feeding the conversation from that statement.
Yeah, and also to mention that from what I'm hearing from festivals, and maybe Carl and Alexis, you can confirm or not, but what I'm hearing is that there is a real, following the COVID, there is a real boom in the production, so that festivals are receiving more and more submissions, which is also highlighting their role, but which is also creating some challenges in a way of
traffic
jams, and how do you make the best visibility for the film that you select, but also how you keep an independent selection on artistic grounds that with so many great works coming your way. That's also another topic, but which is also showing the vitality of the industry right now.
Yeah, exactly. And at a point where some people are discussing about the festivals as an alternative distribution system and everything, it's hardly realistic, because we know that we can expect the same revenue when you do like an MG on territory in a couple of festivals. So that's one of the two learnings from this crisis, post-crisis. But the second one is even more impressive. Is at the time the theater are suffering a lot, especially in North America and everything. It's a bit better here in Europe. Like festivals are just like killing everything. Like it's crazy. Like they are breaking all their audience record on everything. It's crazy. So there's a very big gap between what's happening in festival and in regular theaters. So it's getting still a bit better and improving, and we are getting back to it. But I know so many of the festival of the group who had their best audience ever this exact year. So something is really happening, and we have to discuss that. We have to try to analyze why festival have never been that successful when theater are suffering so much. So it's at the benefits of the festival, of course, but there's something to learn for the whole industry from that.
Well, I think it speaks to the eventization of film and the importance of, the human experience. And I mean, we see that not just in film festivals, we see that in I work with a wide array of industries. We see that across all different conferences, essentially. And I know it's not so nice to call a film festival a conference, but it's really a conference. And so it's
not.
It's a cool conference. But it's the same thing where you see people coming back in droves. They want that live experience. And why do they want that live experience? In sales of any kind, that human element is so critical. And I know for myself, a consummate salesperson, I'm happy to call myself that, I was able to sell really well digitally online, but it's different. That was transactional. And now when I'm able to meet with people, read their body language, get to know them, develop those deeper relationships, the sales are more sustainable, they're longer lasting, they're more meaningful, and it makes it harder for people to walk away. When you're doing transactional sales, those are the first ones that get cut when budgets get cut. And that's why conferences and film festivals really matter.
And I don't think all festivals in the U.S. are doing great yet. There's still a lot of work for them. Many of them haven't got back up to where they were post-pandemic. And the other issue is like venues. In Europe, in the U.S., cinemas are closing. Like in Sonoma, I finally got them to go to this multiplex, and it was fantastic. And then they closed permanently the week after we ended the festival. So now we have to go back and figure out where we're going to have venues next year. And San Francisco International, the venue that they had planned on being closed 2 months before, and they were able to sort of convince the operators to sort of be able to reopen it just for the festival, and it's not going to be there next year. So it's like venues is, I don't know if venues is a huge thing. And I think partnerships, as festivals, I think it's important for us to work with cinemas to help them get audiences. And part of it is building audiences so that they can, because without the cinemas, I mean, it's much more difficult. I mean, the festivals, you can't survive without, you need cinemas. You can't just build them all out every year. I mean, you can, but it's very expensive.
The same goes with in Europe, actually. I've got a terrible example in mind. I was lucky enough to be a jury in Athens a couple of months ago, and I was so bloody jealous about the audience there. Like, I mean, they were showing some French avant-garde from from whatever heritage film, and it was packed, totally packed with like kids, like 20 years old kids that were going to see those like heritage films. And at the same exact moment right now, they are fighting to keep the cinema alive. Like the most legendary, the most iconic are closing. Even if this audience is there, but still they need to fight to make it still alive, which is ridiculous.
I think it's really interesting because all of you have like totally underlined the importance of the relationship between the venues and the festivals. And do you think, as you mentioned, like Seattle bought the cinema, right? Mm-hmm. Is this like, and which leads me to the point, festivals do need to happen like kind of all year round to establish their brand. I mean, I don't know if you would agree. I guess TIFF is kind of a great example because they have built their venue and they're called TIFF all year round in a way.
But it's
right?
not. Yes, but it's not always. You know.
No, it's not always packed. I know, but is it the key? Does it come from festivals? Does it come from the cinema owners? Like, who would lead this to be like a really sustainable kind of collaboration?
It takes time. I know personally from running a festival that in 2007 we just had the festival up until that point, and we opened a single screen cinema, and it took 3 years for that cinema to actually work financially, but it was worth the investment. And then we were able to add a film center with another single screen, and then we took over another theater that closed, a 3-screen, and then another single screen. So now the goal at the beginning was to be the leading independent exhibitor in the sort of the Seattle market, mm-hmm. and now that's actually just been realized. So it's sort of, but it's taken it's taken 15 years plus to build it. So it can't just happen overnight. But if you work at it, you just have to work at building your audiences. And the festival audience is not the same as the year-round audience. You have to be aware of how they're different and how you can combine them and how you can use the year-round audience to sort of build up your festival and vice versa. So it's sort of they both actually contribute to each other. Mm. And the strength, at least for me, in my organization when I was there, was that it allowed us to have the sort of the infrastructure to be a year-round presenting arts organization and do a lot of different things and that we wouldn't be able to if we were just presenting the festival on an annual basis.
That's a huge point about the audiences being different. I know at TIFF, when I left, there was a huge discrepancy between the year-round audience versus the festival audience and even what they wanted to see and where they came from and all of those things, right? But that's another reason why what we talked about before with those festival partnerships. So again, bringing in other people from the ecosystem to use your space. If you are going to be doing something live, and that's another thing to think about too when you create these collaborations, how can you work together with cinemas, whether it be your own venue or with other venues, and create those bigger picture partnerships across a variety of different organizations that will drive more impact. And then, if you're really smart, you're going to back that up and think about, okay, now this is now talking about major cultural impact. Are there potentially government agencies that would be interested in supporting this kind of venture? Are there larger scale corporates or philanthropists, like I said before, who might be interested in supporting this venture? Suddenly, you're not this one-man show anymore. You've got a whole community that you're driving and impacting, and that obviously will also lead to new revenue streams.
Alexis, did you want to add something on the kind of year-round activities or?
Yeah, so I think this is when I mentioned like the steps we have to do toward the others in a matter of culture. I think this is part of it. Before you had those festivals that had their momentum, very short one, and so you need to wait like for 11 months before the website was updated and something to happen. There's less and less festivals who do such things. We all have like our yearly activities for different reasons. Because yes, we handle a lot. like in promoting the content, and circulating the work and everything. But also, like, let's talk marketing. This is what we try to learn. We have to create a brand, create a group, federate an audience. And so we all have like our initiative. It can be online, can be for us, for example, it's just something as simple as a monthly lab where we screen one film in the condition of a festival with an introduction, different presentation and everything. And so we keep that communication alive 365. That's basically what we try to learn from you guys. And it's always a question of surviving also for festivals. And realize that it's super efficient. I remember that just after the COVID, when the cinema reopened, we had those few screenings, like even monthly. And when the cinema had like, even for Marvels, like 10 people, we were coming with like an underground Iranian film, and the room was totally packed, and everyone was, what's happening there? So it's branding, and they are trying to work on that.
Branding and maybe like the event notion that it's only
And,
one
totally.
night, right?
Exactly.
One film screening, one night. It's not showing like...
And it's very helpful for us to keep this community alive. And so we have all those social things and everything. So yeah, a festival is not anymore one just single moment. There is something attached on and we've got dedicated team working yearly on that. So it's great that we can use this potential.
Charlotte, do you see that with the members, FIAPF, that, because I think it's very common in Europe and probably in North America, but like this all year round aspect is not maybe everywhere. Like, would you see that? Is it one of the topics that in other regions of the world that this is now like an essential mission to be present all year round? Or
so to be totally honest, I wouldn't say that this has been a discussion within the group for now. We have, of course, TIFF, which is represented as well, and we haven't got to that discussion yet. For us, what's really important from the producer side of things is that the films would be represented during, of course, a highlighted event, which is like the main moment of the festival. And then, of course, if there are any additional use of the film that are being made, I don't know, online or during other screenings during the year, that it's an additional thing that is dealt with the producers or with the sales agents. But to be totally honest, at this stage, I will keep this question in mind for the next meeting, which will take place on Monday. But it's a good question, but we haven't got to talk too much about that. So I'd be interested in hearing from others and from them as well.
Can I add one thing quickly?
Sure.
Just around year-round, I think that there's this misconception that you actually have to yourself be exhibiting films year-round to engage your audience. And that's not necessarily the case. I know when I was at TIFF, we launched a program with a major streaming service in Canada where we actually would show films on that streaming service. This is before TIFF had launched its own. And then we would host discussions in and around that. So the lift wasn't entirely on us all the time to engage our audiences. Again, film festivals are largely about bringing together community for discourse. And so if you're able to utilize other channels, other platforms, even digital channels for that discourse, it doesn't always have to happen in cinema, and that might also be a bit more economically efficient for some of the smaller organizations.
You want to add something?
I don't know, I'm just thinking it's probably completely separate, but it's also thinking about partnerships and how you can work with, for example, an example would be we had a French festival and there was a partner that had streaming and they actually were interested in getting SVOD rights for some films and we actually came with this idea to actually we would work with sales agents to find some French films we wanted to show but hadn't sold and sort of were a year or two older, and we would get to show them in our festival in person, and we would also give them money from this company to stream them across the U.S. So it was actually we were able to provide this partnership where and a benefit to the sales agents where they actually got revenue they weren't going to get, and we got these films we didn't have to. We actually had the film rental built in, so we didn't have to pay for the film rental. We got to have a festival. We brought some filmmakers in, and it sort of was like it was sort of it was great for us and it was great for the films because they didn't have a distribution in the U.S. market. And
That's really cool.
so something, so just thinking outside the box sometimes, what are some of the new currencies or sort of values you can provide as a festival, which is sort of separate from what we're talking about, but it's just sort of, I don't know. And yeah, that's it.
No, thanks. It's, I would say that it's particularly true and an exciting opportunity for the U.S. market because the U.S. market is quite large.
Yeah.
So it's Does it work? Yeah, I know who you mentioned, actually. I need to follow up on that. It's very good. What do we want to address? I had one last point,
Well,
which then we'll open for a few questions, of course. No, but I had this question that came. It's not written, but in a way, we all know that festivals now save the big cinema, as in the filmmaking, right? If festivals were not around, very difficult to see emerging filmmakers, or even the big ones that are doing not blockbusters, right? So it is saving the big cinema, but can it save the cinemas, the venues? I think it's something that keeps coming back, and I think to help the conversation go stronger in a way within the festival federation, there's maybe something that needs to be done with networks of cinemas and as well. I don't know. It's something that opened up. Alexis.
It's a very big
subject.
It's a big question. Yeah, I think that's locally with our very small and non-representative region in Luxembourg, the venues first they were hesitating it was a waste of money because they don't get the income they get with proper screenings and everything. And then they realized how big it was in a matter of audience development. Some people that never came there because they were going to only as a cinematheque or their outhouse were showing there and everything. So it's a chair of an enlargement of audience that is now something they are totally convinced with. So. And again, if we have to take some benefit of the COVID, they realized it through the COVID. That we had some loyalty that maybe they didn't. And so when we are talking about the concurrence with the platforms, with the streamers and everything, loyalty is something that festivals can refer to. So venues have noted right now, and they are still noticing it through the results that, again, festivals after festival and record after record, we are getting to. It's crazy.
Thank you so much.
If we have to be optimistic in some way.
Yes, we need to.
And my mind keeps taking me back to audiences, because it's the audience. It's the paradigm of audiences. So audiences that go to festivals naturally may not go to cinemas year round, and audiences that go to blockbusters may not come to festivals and think they're not. So how can I get those audiences going to go see Fast and Furious to come, also come to my festival and think that it's for them and it's not just it's not just elitist art form? And how do I then, in the same way, how do I get the people that are coming to the festival to embrace going to these cinemas that we're at and to all cinemas throughout the year? And how do we also, the new audience, how do we get them off their screens in person? Because I'm really, virtual has been, it was a lifesaver during the pandemic, and it's still a great opportunity to reach people through online virtual platforms, but I'm still an old school fan of doing it in person, in the theater, with the audience, with the cast on stage, with the director. That is what excited me and got me. When I first went to my first festival screening, I didn't even know what it was, and I'm like, "What is this? And this is amazing. How do I see more of these things? And how do I work at a festival?" And it was like, "How can I get that job?"
Cool.
So somehow that actually worked out. But that's how do I get that excitement and instill that into the new audiences? And how do we do that as festivals? Because that's we need to generate new audiences. And so what can we do to do that? How can we make, that sort of exciting, Greg Araki's Doom Generation got re-released in the US, and it's the new audiences are excited to go see it in the theater, and it's doing fantastic.
But it's about drawing lines from what they know to what you're going to show them, right? And I think that's important too, that communication of it is accessible to you. It is something that you'll find there's some comfort in knowing what you know, right? So drawing those lines from A to B, I think, is important for audiences, but also a big part of the value proposition of film festivals is creating community. And I think now, especially after the pandemic, a lot of people are starved for community and figuring out where they belong. And again, there are so many different types of communities that convene during film festivals. It's a really nice opportunity to invite more people from within or adjacent to those communities to come along for the ride.
Yes, that's something we have to face. We have to let people realize that a festival is not a cathedral for privileged people. The red carpet thing is something very illustrative of the problem. We have to bring kids from school. I became very emotional like a couple of weeks ago because this is a young director who like submit a short film, and he told me that that's the first time he went to the cinema. For some reason, Leslie, you were at this screening actually, like at the first festival back in 2011. And he said, this is the first time I came to the cinema. And so we have planned some special condition. You had an introduction, you have a contextualization of the film and everything. And so it became a habit, and now he wants to make his career on that. So this is something that you can rely to when you think, is it useful to run a festival? So now this is this audience from a very young experience. So I can't imagine with what you guys are doing for so long time with those like very, very like historical events and everything, the impact on society on those people. Yeah.
I mean, in some way, it's like fish. You need something on the hook to get people in, and then once you get them in, you can bring them back. But,
Totally.
But you do need to have some bait.
Keep them hooked.
And it's like, what is that bait that you can add to your festival to sort of, to get people to come in that might not come in and then they will hopefully come back.
Absolutely.
And the education, I guess it's a really, really important part of the festival's work. And when we are speaking about festivals all year long, I feel like there are so many festivals doing a great job in schools and attracting the young audiences as well. So I think that's really positive to show them the diversity of the world as well. And it's like an open window to the world and to current things going on in the world.
Well, let's continue this mission. We have about 10 minutes to sum up, and I'd love to open to some questions, please. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Leslie Vanderpool. I'm the founder and executive director of the Bahamas International Film Festival, which we just wrapped last week, so I'm exhausted. And I'm really happy to hear all of the comments on stage. I feel like we've accomplished our mission. But we still need solutions. And I think that, the film festival, you mentioned, Leslie, the tools. A facility is a tool. So I think that the film festivals really need to garner those facilities. And your point in terms of building communities, you need to have somebody who's working year-round to contact those interest groups, for the particular film. Like we invite not just the corporate clients, we invite maybe the Indian community or the Spanish community to open the film, and then they bring their whole community. But a question I have, with the Sonoma Film Festival, of course you have a competitive event around the area, and you have to try and traverse through sponsorship. How do you encourage the sponsors to support both festivals, or do you have a problem with that?
In terms of sponsorship, I mean, it's you say competitive in the Bay Area. I think the Bay Area is very competitive as far
Sonoma,
as festivals.
Napa.
Yeah.
Do you find that you guys are like trying to get the same sponsors, and how do you convince them to that Sonoma is that event
Right.
to sponsor?
It's interesting because Sonoma and Napa are very different. I don't really find it that I don't think we work collaborative in that way with finding sponsors, but within those groups, like we're always collaborative as far as finding information. For example, in Sonoma, it's not a big market, so they didn't have an airline sponsor, but I had a relationship with someone that formerly in Seattle that had worked with Delta, and so I contacted them, and they set up a friendly meeting with the LA office, and we were able to get Delta as a sponsor. But so I think the biggest thing is in the community I don't know how to answer that other than with Napa. I haven't actually talked to anyone from Napa because I actually live in Valencia, Spain, but I spend time in Sonoma when I'm working there. So I'm not right in the community. I'm not the executive director, but I think the biggest thing is just it's networks, and in the community I did meet a lot of people this year, and so it's more about that than anything else.
I've done those deals, actually. I've definitely done those deals where we've either ourselves already had a sponsor, or somebody else had a sponsor, and we realized there was a great opportunity for us to get a piece of that pie. But the key is growing the pie first, right?
We're 18 years, but we still feel like we are fresh and
Right, exactly. And so oftentimes what I found in those situations was you want to define your unique value proposition, but you want to make sure it feels complementary with the other organization so that the two halves create one greater whole. That's if you're going after someone, a sponsor, to sponsor both of you. In the case that you're going off and you're doing it yourself and you want your own sponsor and you don't want to involve them, then it is really understanding what is your very, very unique value proposition, your very, very unique community impact, and then try to drive some good data as well. But I love the collaborations. Those can work. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, we didn't leave enough time for questions. Please.
Hiya, I'm the founder of the International Animal Future Film Festival. It's quite a niche film festival that has a charity purpose, and I'm stuck at funding, honestly, because it's kind of the first time, and I try to do all the things in the UK and then explore the things, but the founders always find it risky for the first time, like film festival, especially it's with a charity purpose without too many commercial aims, and it's really hard to explain to B-side. So I wonder, what's your suggestion for those niche film festivals to develop?
Jennifer.
The natural tension between commerce and art. That's the first conversation I have with a lot of clients. It's really common to have folks be uncomfortable with the idea of over-commercialization. So you do need to watch for that. And I think what you need to do is make sure that everyone within the organization comes together and agrees on what their comfort level is, while also agreeing on what the requirements are. So again, what are you really required to bring in? What are the channels that you can lever to actually bring in that revenue? And then what are you willing to do to actually activate those channels? So first, internal agreement. But I think you're in the UK, you said?
Yeah, in the UK, and also some screenings in China as well, Nepal, and also Paris.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's like a global activity, I would say, instead of a business film festival.
Right.
Yeah.
What I will say is that certainly within the UK, and I think growing now in Paris, you do have you've got an established sponsorship market. So you have sophisticated corporations who understand what good partnership looks like. And that's one thing I would say to everyone here. I've seen bad partnership. The really where they come in, they throw their advertisement on your screen and it's not customized and it's not speaking directly to your audience. You need to make sure that you're avoiding that. And in certain markets, UK market being one, they're sophisticated. A lot of organizations will understand that the best way to actually communicate with your audience, which is why they'd be sponsoring you in the first place, is to create a customized communication and to really approach them in a thoughtful way. So it won't feel overly commercialized. That's something I would definitely recommend that you think about, and also really lean in heavily to that charitable messaging and look at other organizations who have similar charitable objectives as you and see who's sponsoring them.
Okay, thank you so much.
Very last question, please. And we'll try to be brief.
I'll be fast.
Thank you.
Alexandra Say. I'm the executive director of the Regent Theatre, which is located in rural Ontario, a place called Prince Edward County. I want to bring the conversation back to data. You all mentioned the importance of data collection in terms of understanding your audience. Can you each speak to briefly how you are doing that data collection?
I'll just say quickly, because I'm from around the corner from you. You don't have to get too complicated. You can obviously hire big agencies who will come and they'll do research, they'll do audience research, they'll do social impact research, cultural impact research. They're a fortune. Great if you can bring them in, but sometimes it's very simple. You can do a survey monkey online, asking a couple of key questions to your audience, where they're coming from, what drives their interest, would they refer you? That's a big one. Net Promoter Score is what that's called, right? Okay. So asking a handful of questions over a survey monkey can often be enough to get the core information and get you going out there in the marketplace.
Carl?
For me, well, I think the most direct way is through our platforms that we operate ourselves with, and in my two festivals, in Sonoma and Orcus right now, we use Eventive, and so it's the data that we collect from ticket sales, but also it's the data we collect from the balloting, and it's actually really great with our partners to give that back to the individual suppliers of it's great information for them as far as ratings of how many people actually gave it a 5, a 4, 3, 2, or whatever your ratings are, but the data that we get from that, and then there's Google Analytics, and there's lots of other ways, but the direct data is pretty phenomenal as far as having access to all that information as far as who bought tickets from where, and then the pass holders, like how many times did they actually use it, and where did they use it, and where there's lots of data. I'm still parsing data from this past March.
Yeah, I think those are all really useful tips, and I would say also like collecting feedback from the audience, also like from your audiences, that during the event, that it's the moment where they are probably more attentive and really excited about the event. So this is where you should grab some comments from the audience and then feed that back and put that in a nice presentation and to show to your funders as well.
Okay, there's not even time for a conclusion, proper one. Except, well, thank you very much. And thank you for this full
Thank you so much.
room. It's really cool. Just want to announce that next Tuesday afternoon, there is a kind of follow-up conversation that we will have. I think it's a sort of closed room. You need to register. Please raise your hand, maybe Adela, who's working with the market. If you want to attend and continue conversation, we really highly encourage to do so. Hopefully we'll be having a very collaborative forum. So thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.